right, everybody, it is time to talk about Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, because this movie might genuinely be the front runner for Best Picture of the Year. I am not kidding. In a year full of remakes, reimaginings, all of that stuff, this movie actually feels alive. But despite every critique, and yes, I have a few of those and we're going to talk about them, I enjoyed this movie. I enjoyed being in this world. So let's dive into why Del Toro's Frankenstein is a gorgeous, flawed, and passionate Gothic triumph, and why, despite everything, it might just be the movie we all needed right now. So pop that tape in, I got you, let's go do this. So Frankenstein, yeah, this in my opinion should be the front runner for Best Picture of the Year, and I don't toss that statement around lightly because honestly I don't typically care about the Oscars anymore, but this one is definitely leaps and bounds better than Robert Eggers' Nosferatu. No matter how you feel about that film, that one sometimes felt like a seminar on moodiness and sort of a pretentious slow burn of Eggers' admiration itself. And this one is alive in every sense of the word. That doesn't mean it's without its problems, but it is definitely passionate. It is romantic. It is super stunning visually to look at, though even that's not without some issues, but it is messy and completely compelling. It's one of those films where even the flaws feel like they're coming from a place of love rather than of calculation to get butts in the seats or sanitize the source material or whatever. And that kind of starts with Jacob Elordi, and he's the monster you can't look away from. He steals this film. He's the standout performance. He's mesmerizing at times. The way he's like childlike, which is a change up, and then other times philosophical and learned, and sometimes heartbreaking and violent. But this is also where Del Toro kind of has a little bit of an issue. His tender heart towards his creature that he loves so much shows through. Much like Eggers slightly falling in love with his Nosferatu, Del Toro is like absolutely smitten with his creature, with his monster. He is in love with Frankenstein's monster 100%, to the point where the monster is framed as pure-hearted and almost saintly, and his violent acts then are sort of overshadowed and softened as more as like misunderstandings rather than moral choices or bad things that he's done, which works beautifully for the emotional sort of core of the film that Del Toro's going for, but it also distorts some of the darker complexities that make Frankenstein what it is. Still, Elordi's performance is so strong, it anchors the entire movie, in my opinion, and every scene he is in feels elevated because of it. And then you have Oscar Isaac, who does a good job but kind of pushes too hard. He delivers moments of brilliance, there's no doubt. He's got real anguish, religious terror that gets into there, and a psychological unraveling. But the film kind of keeps pushing him into daddy issues territory. So intensely, in fact, that he starts to feel like kind of cartoonish, almost a comic book version of Victor himself. Now, Victor Frankenstein has always been one of the great tragic figures of literature, a brilliant but flawed man driven by love, ambition, grief, and hubris. And here, he's almost rewritten and transformed into an abusive father archetype with his emotional volume dialed to 11 the whole time. There's depth hinted at, especially his guilt over divine punishment for his hubris, for what he's created. And this would have been an important exploration of his character, given that it is all, that reason is set as the reason we do not go into the whole bride storyline, where the monster asks Victor to make him a companion immediately after Victor had awakened from a dream that hell literally waits for him when he dies because of his bastardized creation against God. So this would have been a moment to explore that with Victor, how he's tormented by what he did and the guilt and the fear of this divine punishment. But instead, we can't let that moment breathe because Del Toro loves his monster so much, we've got to pivot immediately back to the monster's accelerated moral awakening, which basically happened in a few months. He understood morals and the meaning of life better than anyone else in just a few months' time. So it's a compelling arc, a take on Frankenstein, but it's a little incomplete for Victor here. And the movie itself looks beautiful, but it's sort of a love letter to this. It's Del Toro's romanticized version of what he imagines here because he loves it so much. And production-wise, the movie is stunning, all right? Nearly every set is hand-built, it's tactile, it's real, locations are real, it's overflowing with detail. These are things I love about Del Toro. His love for that practical stuff is... It earns him a spot with me. But ironically, the lighting often works against it, in my opinion. From a cinematography standpoint, the film is beautiful, but many scenes are so bright and smooth and flat or evenly lit that they almost start to look digitally polished rather than, grim and an industrial world that it's supposed to be in, this early Victorian era or whatever. You almost get this digital look on things that are not digital. It's like they were pulled from a oil painting or a illustrated book rather than the reality of it. And this is where surprisingly Eggers' Nosferatu behaves a little bit better because he gives us the grime just a little bit, the dampness, the rot, and a lived-in world of dread, where Del Toro gives us a romantic, poem almost in motion. It's gorgeous, but very idealized. Passionate for sure, but also just kind of soft around the edges and gives it that overslick, over-polished look. So when you think of Frankenstein, what you really should think of visually is like Birkin hair era body snatching, like fog-choked alleyways of Jack the Ripper, Victorian grime, dampness, fog, early technology crashing into Victorian era gothic decay, almost like a little steampunk in there on top of all that. Honestly, the closest I've ever seen to perfect with this Frankenstein aesthetic remains the Penny Dreadful series on Showtime. Brief, but almost ideal. If you haven't seen it, check that out. Del Toro's world, though, it's beautiful. It's breathtaking. It's just not entirely faithful to the novel or what you would imagine realistically for this. And that kind of leans into his love for his monster and this romanticized look, because the monster's design is beautiful and maybe a little too beautiful. And Del Toro, we know he loves his monsters to a fault. Romantically, poetically, mythologically, my man loves his monsters. And we've seen that And we've seen he loves his monstrous romances too, in like The Shape of Water, Crimson Peak, hell, even Hellboy, really. And that love leads him here to cast basically a good-looking male model of an actor who's like the most striking and tall actor that he could find, and then barely cover him up with any makeup. And look, I am actually glad in some ways that we're finally getting a long-haired, more human expressive monster. Some of the look is maybe more realistic than like the flat top and the bolts, but it's also clear that Del Toro just couldn't bring himself to make the creature look truly monstrous. He wanted us to see the creation the way he sees it. Beautiful, tragic, and elegant, which is where Mia Goth's character comes in. She's basically Del Toro looking adoringly at the monster she loves so much. So as a thematic choice, it works. As a faithful adaptation, that's debatable at best. But for the emotional swing of this movie, it definitely lands. Though I think you lose a little bit of what makes the monster a monster. Maybe just a little hair further instead of trying to make him his beautiful creature. But and that kind of brings us to Mia Goth, who does a solid job with the limited material she's given. Though her character feels underused, really, she's more symbolic as the aforementioned stand-in for Del Toro's own empathy and love and affection towards the monster. And her immediate emotional connection to the creature only makes sense if you look at it as a stand-in for Del Toro. Otherwise, you're looking at it as you realize she's just considering the monster looks like Jacob Elordi with a few little tasteful scars, and well, then we just call that what it is at that point. And then you have Charles Dance, who is phenomenal as always. Dude could read the phone book in a Victorian lab coat and elevate the film. He's that good. He always is. And you might hear all this and think, I'm down on this movie. And that's not it. It's honest critique and fair critique. This is the opposite of being down on this movie. A reviewer's job is not to be a cheerleading fanboy or to give falsely over-aggrandized reviews for swag bags or access or anything like that. And it's not to be a hater for clickbait or rage bait or anything. It's to actually critique the film honestly. And honestly, I love the film. I found it gripping, immersive, completely immersive, and emotionally very rich. Unlike Nosferatu, which felt self-serious and occasionally exhausting and pretentious, where Frankenstein kept me wanting more story, more character, more world, like really just more of everything. Even the altered ending, which I liked, felt like it needed just a bit more time. The emotional setup that we had built up through the film deserved a longer, more like thoughtful landing towards the end. And the fact that a 2.5 hour movie left me wanting more tells you everything you need to know about this movie. And I guess that's my thoughts on it. It is a flawed triumph, in my opinion. It is definitely made with love for the source material. I don't know if we will ever get a faithful, gritty, like raw adaptation of Frankenstein, the novel. Maybe we won't. But what Del Toro gives us is something just as meaningful. He gives us a filmmaker who loves the source material, who loves and respects its legacy, who isn't afraid to be romantic, emotional, and earnest in an era where so many adaptations and remakes and reimaginings either sanitize their source material or almost hate their source material in a way. They're almost like bitter that they have to use that iconic source material in characters or films to build their new film on. So they either reinvent it or sanitize it beyond all recognition in the name of modernization. It is very refreshing and just so honestly refreshing to see someone embrace a classic and the source material of that classic with genuine respect and a heartfelt vision and so much love that they wanted everyone to see it and see its greatness through their eyes. And that is what Del Toro did, and that is what filmmaking should be. Del Toro's Frankenstein, not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it is alive. It is emotionally, artistically, and spiritually alive. And that alone makes it one of the year's most remarkable and best films. So yeah, for me, it deserves a serious shot at Best Picture. And that's what I got for you this time. I hope you enjoyed this review. If you did, please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. And until next time, be kind, rewind like always. Just Chase with AV Pop Culture, and I'll see you real soon. Bye-bye. I know.